My name is Laura Trutoiu. I'm the Director of Research at the Association of Creatine Deficiencies. And as I said earlier, I'm trying to summarize some of the insights for these past couple of days and also bring it back to like what the big picture is. So a big thank you to our 27 speakers and our many moderators, and very importantly, the researchers that made all of this pushing science forward possible, and our families and the families of the researchers too. I think the excitement and the enthusiasm we've seen in the past 2 days is giving all of us hope. So I got into this in 2017 when my kiddo Rohan, who's shown in the picture here, got diagnosed with CTD. And this is here he is at the Austin conference in 2018 when I joined the AC, when I joined officially the board. And as a parent, so I am a researcher in my day job in a completely different field, so I can empathize. But as a parent, I want to bring it back that for us, the motivation is quite urgent and unstoppable. So yes, these conditions are young conditions in medical terms, but for a parent, the 20-year mark is a lot of time. And as I was thinking, like, okay, there's great research happening. We're seeing amazing progress and we're seeing all this work, but there is this looming headline of, you know, we've been 20 years without the CTD treatment for a monogenic condition, right? And maybe this is the engineer in me speaking. And clearly we have plenty of evidence from the rare disease world that rare diseases are not easy, right? So this is the first paper published by Haya Solomons and Ton de Gras and the wonderful team in Cincinnati, right? So I also know with my researcher hat on that progress is happening. So every once in a while, I plot the PubMed papers on all CCDS. So this is the one for SLC6A8, and you can see the little blip in 2001 when we went from 2 papers to 3 papers. All of a sudden, we found SLC6A8 is related to intellectual disability, and that was a huge step forward. And the other blip is happening in 2018 when I did the first ACD conference in Austin. And hopefully by the end of 2021, I do hope we're going on this path of more and more papers. Now, this is a course metric, right? Like papers is not everything. Even the research we're seeing here is quite positive, right? Like the sense of community we've built over time has also been empowering and very exciting. This picture is from the Austin Symposium, and it was by far one of my most, and clearly I'm biased, right? But I've attended plenty of conferences, and this was by far the most impactful that we could have probably done in person. So to come back to like where were we in 2018 and where are we now, I thought I would paint a little bit of a picture of how the field has progressed. And I'm looking at this again with my parent hat on of like, are we there when it comes to clinical trials? So again, 2018, what we knew back then with all this excitement from the conference, especially, we had Lumos Pharma, which was a small company that had been funded in 2011 with the sole purpose of developing a CTD therapeutic. And that was a creatine mimetic, cyclocreatine. And there were good results in mice that this was going to pan off. And they had been doing this research. They were part of the community. We also had just started the Vigilance study at the NIH, and this was very exciting. We had families figured out how to join. You know, it was in the early stages. We were still trying to like get more people to participate in research. Our friends at Ultragenics had given a wonderful presentation declaring we are working on a double prodrug, right? And this was great to see. And again, it brought a lot of hope to the community that things are moving and, you know, there are going to be pathways there. Janana Therapeutics was in the audience. There was no presentation from them, but they were very lovely to talk to everyone. And they're working on SLC transporters as a therapeutic target class. So I think most of us were connecting dots. And Dr. Mabonzo also introduced this notion of the intranasal administration of a creatine compound, not creatine per se, and eventually this turned into Ceres Therapeutics. Right, so this was all wonderful. We left out of there figuring out, okay, clinical trials are right around the corner. It's going to happen. We're going to get there. And in 2021, there have been a couple of updates, right? Like Lumos discontinued their cyclocreatine program because of safety data. The Vigilance study is reaching its 2-year mark. So we're going to hear from the update in the next week. And we just had the update from Melanie nicely on Ultragenics and the research on caregivers. And Janana never pursued the CTD as an actual, it never appeared on their pipeline for drugs. Cirrus Therapeutics is continuing and showed some very nice results. So again, things are quite exciting. But again, with a parent hat on, I think we can do more, right? And we know the road to treatments is long, right? So for anyone, I'm not a medical professional, but even I know that 10 to 15 years for orphan drug discovery is very much not unreasonable, right? And even with that, if you get to a clinical trial, the rule of thumb is that you have perhaps 10% chance of success, right? So we're not exactly stacking the odds in our favor here. We would need to have many more options and many more years and many more dollars, right? So what can we do? Well, we're gonna keep doing what we're doing, and this is increasing our community, right? These are the numbers for our CTD patients and our GAM patients and AGAP patients, and we can see a clear trend in increasing. Finding new patients is gonna be a big deal for us. We're gonna keep hosting these meetings, right? And bring researchers together. So we had the 2018 Symposium, then we had satellite sessions at SIMD and SSIEM with our friends in France with Extraordinaire. We had a virtual conference last year because we had to, and now we're getting the hang of it. And I feel like we're gonna make this regular no matter what, even if we end up meeting in person. And again, one of the questions that I've been asking myself is, how unreasonable is it to say that we should get to a treatment in less than 20 years? Are there rare diseases out there that got to a treatment in shorter amounts of time? Or even, to open it up and be very positive about it, what can we expect in how many years past the 20-year mark would we assume we can get to a treatment if things cooperate? So I would love if anyone in the audience has examples of that, please send them in the chat or ping me directly. I tried to ask a bunch of people, so I don't have a good answer. The one example that came through and through was spinal muscular atrophy. Now, this is not apples to apples comparison. So spinal muscular atrophy is a condition that has a much larger population. They've been used as kind of like the poster child for rare diseases and how they're moving forward. And it's really because they discovered the gene in around 96. And by 2016, they had 6 drugs in clinical development, right? Like, that's huge. And they've been very forward, and they've had a lot of impact on the community in general. Now, the reason why this is not apples to apples is that SMA is unfortunately very easy to diagnose in some ways, and it had a long track record of building a community. So the patient org was formed in 1984, I believe, and the disease was described much earlier. For us, for CTD in particular, it was 2001 that we figured that these undescribable intellectual disability, global developmental delay were caused by one gene. So our story, it's a little bit different. And in terms of the patient population, my basic back of the envelope calculation is that there may be an order of magnitude difference, right? So if SMA is saying there are probably 30,000 patients in the US, if not 50, with some old estimates, we have about CTD being 0.2 to 1% of unknown causes of intellectual disability. That's how I'm kind of making the estimate of, we have an order of magnitude, right? And looking at the SMA story, I think we can also try to figure out what did they do well and what can we do as a smaller community and a smaller org to pursue the same path, right? So they did get to treatments in less than 20 years. Well, I think my very simple description of what I saw SMA doing is that they had this road to treatments formula that was made out of money, fundraise a lot, invest in research a lot, and then have a very, very robust, diverse pipeline. So they very consciously made the decision to say, we're going to pursue multiple avenues of drug development, and we're going to invest in very bold ideas that may not be at the de-risked enough to be picked up by pharma yet. But we as a patient org are going to make the conscious investment in saying we're going to pursue that. And this is really our take-home message too for the ACD in particular of like, how can we scale this up and how can we make sure that we don't have another 20 years where we look back and say, where are the treatments, right? So our board of directors has been growing and our team in general has been growing. You've seen many of these people in the meeting today. We're pushing very hard on newborn screening. And luckily on the capacity building side, we have the support of the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative with about $500,000 in funds for scaling up how we do fundraising and how we make sure that we can drive this from the parent seat, that we're not just bystanders in this process, but we are active players. And we're doing this very collaboratively. The whole point of the patient registry is to ensure that as many programs can take advantage of patient data as possible. The same example with the Coriell biosamples, where we want to make sure that any researcher that wants to do tests on patient cells can easily get access to them. Okay, I need to take a breath now. So I think my call of action for the researchers as we're starting these programs is to be bold and take risks that you perhaps wouldn't normally take. And we don't have the money of SFA, at least not yet, right? But what we do have is this very clear and consistent motivation that we are going to try to go for as many options as possible. So the ACD fellowships are an example of that. We're giving out small grants. These are not going to solve the problems. They're not going to get us to clinical trials yet, again. But what they are going to do is perhaps help you de-risk an idea to the point where you can actually apply for that R1 grant, or go back and find the collaboration with another researcher and pull resources together, or find that clinical tool that is needed, or translational science tool that multiple researchers would benefit for. And that's how we believe we're going to move forward. So now, to wrap it up, and I think this is what the parents care about, I tried to do a summary of, I showed you the beautiful SMA pipeline for what do treatments look like, right? And I wanted to highlight that we do have a baby pipeline. So we have 3 gene therapy efforts, 2 of them for CTD and 1 of them for GAMT, and all 3 of them were presented in the past 2 days, right? Again, these are in the mice model studies, and they're showing some of them some promising results, some of them some results that are not so promising, but because they're being shared, it means that the next iteration of this is going to be helped. So Dr. Laura Baroncelli has been wonderful in the CCDS Gene Therapy Consortium in actually sharing all her insights in what worked and what didn't work in her gene therapy program. And the hope is that as she does this, not only does she learn from the process, but the other researchers can do the same and kind of progress their research as well. Drug repurposing is a big area for us, and it's primarily because the timelines are shorter and it requires less money, and it's something that we know doesn't get a lot of market appeal because there's not a lot of money to be made from drug repurposing. I put here the same diagram of drug repurposing in comparison to regular drug discovery, just to get a sense of that the phases can be much, much shorter. And that's where we have our fellowships invested in, with both Chuck and Peter working on early and promising results. We have another program in the drug discovery bucket, and that's Dr. Longo's GAMT small molecule search. I do hope that we have a couple of CPD programs there by the next time, right? And you've just seen some of the wonderful work from Ultragenics and Ceres Therapeutics that are industry programs. So this is not something that we're funding. I do believe Extraordinaire is funding some of the Ceres Therapeutics work, so I did want to acknowledge them there. But they are programs that, and again, from my perspective as a parent, I would like all of these to succeed, right? So I'm looking at them as what is the CCDS treatment pipeline in general? And again, our kiddos are pushing themselves every day and learning new skills and doing everything they can do. So I feel like we can do it too. And on that note, here's a very, very ambitious plan, right? That I was saying it out loud yesterday and I was like, is this possible? Can we make this work? But I think this is the power of community. And I think if we set our mind to it, we can. So in a 5-year goal, I think we should have 5 INDs. And whether those are partners or collaborations or homespun from the programs that we're funding, so be it. I think a very important part of that is to push on the newborn screening. We've had some good results with GAMT now, and this is really going to bring the comparison I was making with SMA. There's a possibility out there that increasing our community base is all of a sudden going to bring us to that level where we can actually compare ourselves to bigger orgs. And all of this is going to be possible and now I'm addressing the parents in the audience, right? Like the families. I don't know how many of you are still sticking with us. But again, our role, so the researchers are doing their job, they're doing a fabulous job. Our role as parents is to make sure that they can do that. So it's fundraising and telling our stories and advocating. So yeah, this is our very ambitious 5-year goal. I think, again, it's scary, but seeing the excitement and seeing the work that's done in the past 2 days, I think it's also possible. So thank you. Any questions from the chat or I feel like I'm moderating myself here. So Sangeeta, if you want to jump in, or Heidi, and actually the entire ACD team as we say goodbye. And if we get questions, we can.
Laura, I think that was a great wrap up to the day, to the 2 days of the conference sessions. And no, I agree. I think this is, while this is ambitious, I think it's something that we should definitely make part of our goals. And I do want to remind everybody in the audience that with the CZI grant, we got $500,000 for 2 years, and I do think that we're seeing some of the fruits of that labor and that effort this year already. And it's only when we build on these findings and we'll actually be able to get to our goals. So in fact, at the start of this conference, when I put together our chart, pillar chart, I was thinking, well, we made progress in all of these avenues, and it's been amazing that we've been able to do it in a COVID scenario in under a year. And I think it's a testament to what we can do when we have the resources and the people with the will to do it. So excellent work to the community over here. I'm so proud of all of us of being affiliated with this community. And I do hope that next year we can actually get to meet in person. So our 2022 Scientific and Patient CCDS Symposium will be held at Park City, Utah. We already have dates for it, and we really hope that next year we'll actually be able to meet in person and build on these amazing findings.